second annual summit. Great job. It's an honor to be here. And we're going to be on Facebook Live on my page, which is Tian Wong page. And as Cynthia mentioned, our CONNECTpreneur events are 6 times a year now. So we do 2 in Baltimore, 2 in Bethesda, and 2 in Virginia. And you can go to CONNECTpreneur.org. We have one on November 16th in Baltimore at the Inner Harbor, and December 13th right here at the Falls Church Marriott Fairview Park. And Marissa Levin is one of our coaches. Thank you, Marissa. And we generally have a great keynote speaker, 8 or 9 presenting companies, and Marissa is one of our awesome coaches. And we have a panel of either VCs or successful entrepreneurs that kind of share their war stories and kind of do stuff like that. So Molly asked me to talk about funding your business this morning. So I have 10 kinds of types of financing that you may want to look at. I've used several of these myself over the years. And we can make this interactive. Feel free to interrupt if you have any questions, or after I lay out the 10 types of financing, you guys can kind of jump in. But before I start, I just wonder how many of you all are business owners? Oh, all of you guys. Okay, good. And are you? I have another question. Okay. I should have done my homework. I'm not the geek that Ms. Lorenzi says I am. And the reason I was late was I wasn't late. I was outside kind of getting ready for this. So I just, I apologize for any confusion. But how many of you? So you're all business owners. So how many of you are doing services, right, and how many of you are doing products? So services and products. Okay. Oh, this table here, okay. And technology products or consumer products or other types of products, non-technology products, okay. And how many of you all are looking for financing either currently or in the short term, near term? So we have a couple of you. So I guess what I'm going to say is it's probably familiar to most of you business owners, but so, I'll just jump right into it. So there's kind of 10, I was thinking about this last night, there's 10 types of financing. Number one, obviously, is your personal resources, right? I mean, who's used credit cards, second mortgages, right? When I started CyberRep, myself and my 2 partners went into $50,000 in credit card debt. And I think you do that because you believe in your idea so much that you don't ever think that you're going to fail or lose your money. Plus, you can't get anyone else to lend you money, so you sort of have to use your own credit card or take a second mortgage out. Number 2 is vendor financing. So by vendor financing, I'm talking about equipment leasing. So if you're buying computers or telephony or gear, and also inventory financing. So if you are reselling something, or if you're in retail, getting financing from your sources of inventory. How many of you have used vendor financing? Either equipment leases or inventory financing. So, vendor financing is a pretty inexpensive way to grow your business. It is off balance sheet, so it doesn't show up on your balance sheet if you're doing, let's say, an equipment lease. We used it because we were in a capital-intensive business in the sense that we had to buy a lot of computers and equipment to grow our business. And we didn't have cash in the bank. So basically our vendor, they want to sell products to us, so they have subsidiaries that actually loaned us the money. The third category I call is triple F. Does anyone know what that is? Anybody?
Friends, family.
Well, that's double F.
Friends, family, and fools.
Fools. So, friends, family, and fools. So that is sort of where you started your business, you got some traction, and you start begging grandma and grandpa and your rich uncles to put some money in. And it can be very lucrative if you ask Kevin Plank over at Under Armour. I think a $10,000 loan became worth over $100 million. But as you grow, as you guys all know, as a business owner, when you grow your business, you're sort of always, capital is like oxygen. You need capital to grow. And if you're growing really fast, you need more capital. So that is a way to, and when you're new, FF&F is very important because you're kind of tapped out and the institutions aren't really looking at you yet. The banks want to see a year or two of historical profits. So it's really tough on small business owners. I don't need to tell you guys that. Number 4 is a little bit unique. I call it customer deposits or customer financing. Has anybody in this room gotten customer financing? And this, I'll tell you a little quick story. When I started my business, I had 10 employees, and I had to pay, you guys know the services business, you have to pay your payroll before you collect money, right? So we landed this big contract with Pepco, the local utility company, and Pepco, we're thinking, wow, this is so awesome. We're going to have this big contract with Pepco. It's like $300 or $400 grand a year. But how are we going to pay for our people? And we were just calling all our friends and family. You know, we'd already maxed out our credit cards. And I don't know, one of us just came up with this idea. Well, why don't we have Pepco financing? Let's ask them for a deposit. So my partners and I, all three of us were from commercial real estate. And as you guys know, in commercial real estate, a tenant always puts a deposit. So we would think, maybe, but in hindsight today, when I look back on it, I was like, what a ridiculous request, right? But it worked. And we gave Pepco 3 options. We said, okay, we can bill you net 7, and you have to pay us $15,000 deposit, and we'll bill you net 15, because we needed money, right, to pay our payroll. Or we'll do the third option. We want to make it so attractive. So when you guys are pricing your services, you want to make sure you have 2 options, and one that looks just really cool, one that you want. So we wanted cash. So we made this so attractive to Pepco. So for a deposit of $60,000, you can pay us net 30, and they are a big company, so they took that option. And we took the 70 grand and paid payroll for 30 days, and we were able to sort of start servicing the contract. So that's something to think about as far as customer deposits. And we were able to, you know, we were kind of naive when we were building our business, and we didn't realize customers don't usually pay deposits. You know, but we sort of justified it with setup fees, with training costs, and things like that. So they were able to, we were able to argue for it. Quite often, the customer would put up some deposit. So even though it seems kind of, you know, customers came and you want their goal, right, and you don't want to ask them for too much. I think if you can find a customer that has a partnership mentality, and we were lucky with Pepco because they did have a partnership mentality, they would actually help you with that. So that's a financing source that people seldom think about, is customer deposit, customer financing. 5th type of financing is, I just call it like non-dilutive financing. So it's grants. It's, you know, if you're in a product and you need R&D, you know, you have the Small Business Administration as SBIR, working for the DOD. The DOD spends, I believe it's they have a pocket of several $1 billion a year. I know NIH also has a several $1 billion pocket of money that they give to innovative companies that are out there creating unique and different things that can benefit what they're trying to do for their mission. And grants as well. So I don't know what businesses, whatever business you're in, there might be some foundations or other organizations that are trying to further their outcomes and objectives. So you can get creative with this non-dilutive type financing. It's not going to cost you any equity, and it's straight up grants. You know, 6, 7, and 8 are different types of debt. So 6 would be like bank debt. You guys have bank loans? Does anybody have a revolving line of credit or fixed term loans? So that's, you know, generally banks want personal guarantees, and they will lend. They're conservative. The rates are good, but they are conservative. They want and they want you to be, it's asset backed generally, your revolving lines of credit. So, you know, you show them your book of receivables, and then they'll lend you, say, 75 or 80% of the money. So if you have $100,000 in receivables, they'll give you 75 or 80% of that. They won't let you go above it. And then you can use that as working capital. I'll say this about banks, you know, when we, you know, banks usually want full personal guarantees, right? So I was from the commercial real estate industry, and when I started my company, a lot of my clients had gone bankrupt, and they had all these personal guarantees and all these lines. So my partners and I said we didn't take bank loans for a long time. I think it was maybe 5 years. So we financed the business based off of credit cards and the Pepco deposit, and we were instantly profitable. But when we first went for that first equipment lease, we got turned down a lot. And I was asking these equipment lease guys, why are you guys turning this down? We're profitable. They said, because you don't have a bank loan. I said, well, we don't have a bank loan because we don't need a bank loan. And they said, well, if you don't have a bank loan, it tells us that you can't qualify for a bank loan. So we immediately got a bank loan, and we didn't really tap into it much. But you want to have a bank loan for that sort of credibility factor. It's like getting a credit card. You don't need to use the credit card, but you've got to establish quote credit. So I found that that was very valuable. The other thing I know I learned from banks is that it's not always 100% recourse. So we shopped around. We picked First Union Bank, which then became Wachovia and is now Wells Fargo, against B of A, who wound up being our bank. But we got them into some kind of bidding war, and we wound up getting a limited recourse loan where they made us, we agreed to personally guarantee, I think it was the top 20% of the loan, and then everything else. So if we ever lost money or went under, we would only be liable for 20% of what we borrowed from them. And the lesson there is shop around. If you shop around, don't take the first or second deal that shows up. Banks are like any other business. They're in a competitive world. So, they're willing to be competitive in certain ways. Maybe not necessarily with rate. So if they don't give you the best rate, that's fine. If you limit my personal guarantee recourse, I would pay a higher rate for that with lower risk. So banks would be number 6. 7 is non-bank financing. Has anyone gotten any non-bank financing sort of debt from these? They're non-bank institutions that they basically source money. They lend it out at really expensive rates. You guys I get like 3 emails a day from these people. They're lending money at a very high rate based off of cash flow. I think that's more, if you don't have a bank loan, but you need to establish some credit and some credibility, that would be an option, but it's a very expensive option. How about factoring? Anybody? So you've gotten, factoring's expensive, right?
Absolutely.
So does everyone know what factoring is? Okay, so factoring is a means of financing. It's where you have an institution that will buy the future income from your receivables at a high rate. So basically, if you have $100,000 in receivables that are paying you, say it's the federal government, they're going to pay you 60 or 75 days, and you need cash today, then you go to a factoring company, and there's lots of those companies out there because since 2008, banks have been very tight with credit. So a lot of these non-bank companies have come up. And the factoring company will come in, they'll evaluate, they'll sort of do due diligence on the creditworthiness of your receivables, and then they'll give you a check. And then they have you turn over your receivables or a certain percentage of it to them so that they can get paid back. So, do you do that as a regular course of your business, or did you do it because you needed the cash at a certain
Right,
time?
so it's just like the way you went to Petco, right?
Right.
So, and since 2008, you can actually get better rates. But basically, they'll give you 80% of your receivables, and then they go ahead and keep 20. And then when you get paid, you get more of that, and they keep their percentage. So it's just a way to have cash flow.
Right, but the rates of interest are pretty high if you compare it to a bank. But then again, it's cheaper than equity.
Yes.
It's cheaper than selling a piece of your company. And the other thing is, if you need the money, you need money. So, 2 more categories of debt, and I can open it up to questions. 2 more categories of financing. One is mezzanine financing. Has anyone gotten mezzanine financing? So mezzanine financing is something that we got as a company. It's sort of that hybrid between debt and equity. So we had a bank loan, and then we needed more money to go buy another company. We were buying a company on the West Coast. So we went to a larger institution. At the time, it was Allied Capital, which is no longer in business, but Allied was not a venture capital fund as much as they were a mezzanine fund. And they call them business development corporations, BDCs. So Gladstone Capital would be an example of one. Saratoga Capital, Farragut Capital. A lot of these guys are here in DC. What they do is they lend you money, it's a loan, and they take warrants, which is sort of a right to purchase stock in your company later, warrants to buy a small percentage of your company. Their overall targeted return, internal rate of return, is in the 16 to 20% range. So they're going to give you a loan at, say, 8 to 12%, and then they're going to estimate where they think your company's going to be in the future, and then sort of work backwards and take a percentage of your company, maybe 4 or 5% over a 5 or 7 year period, and then they want to make that 16 to 20% internal rate of return over that 5 or 7 year holding period. So that would be a combination of the interest you're paying plus the equity increase from those warrants. And we did that. So it's cheaper than selling stocks to a venture capitalist, but it's not cheap. But it's more expensive than bank debt. But banks will have a sort of a leverage limit on what they'll loan you, whatever that is. They might take 2.5 to 3 times the cash flow as the maximum bank would give you. And a mezzanine investor would probably give you another 1 to 1.5 times their annual cash flow in terms of debt. So there were also mezzanine investors who do what they call a unitranche loan, UNITRANCHE, which is a mix of debt, senior debt, and junior debt. So mezzanine debt is junior debt. Instead, they give you one instrument, so that's what they call unitranche. So it's one slice, which is a senior position, and then your blended interest rate would be sort of what you would get if you had a bank loan plus a mezzanine investor. So it's just a way for them to put out more money, and for you as a borrower, for me as a borrower, it's more convenient to do with one institution. So that's mezzanine debt. It's generally for companies that have cash flow. They're making money and they need capital for something. I needed it to buy a business, to make an acquisition, but you might have other needs for your business, and they're relatively easy to deal with. And then the last is equity. So equity comes in the form of angel investors, institutional venture capital, institutional private equity. Have any of you guys gotten angel investment from angels or venture capital, institutional venture capital? So I won't spend a lot of time on this. Product people are attractive to venture capitalists because they want to make massive returns. They want to make 10 to 15x their investment over a 5 to 7 year holding period. So they can't get that kind of return off of a services company, right? But they can get it off of a product. If you come out with a home run product and blow it out, then everyone's happy and they make their big return. But I will say this though, when you take venture capital, I really believe it's number 10 on my list for a reason. It's the investors. I call them the investor of last resort because they're going to take control. They're going to have control provisions on your business. They're going to sit on your board. They're going to give you lots of advice. And if you miss your targets too many times, they're going to fire you. So, you guys don't seem to be at that level where you're looking at venture capital money, which is fine. There's these other 9 ways you can take money to grow your business. But I'm going to stop right there and open it up for questions if you guys have any. And, fire away. Marissa Lavin, what's your question?
So I'll mention 2 things.
Yes.
So the first thing is the friends and family, right? We know a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
If you're going to go and take money from friends and family, right, to ask them to invest in you, it's really important to treat it as a business relationship, right? With all the legal documents done. Conversely, if you're going to invest in a friend's company as a friend and family, be aware that that's a risk, and they may or may not be able to give you an ROI, and you need to be okay with that as the investor, and not let it affect your relationship. And that's a really hard place to be. And I've seen it happen with small amounts and with large amounts, where people invest, whether it's a few $100s up to $1 million. I've known people who have invested $1 million in a friend's company and it didn't work out. That's the risk of the friends and family. It's not up to the person who's growing the business to pay you back. The truth is they're going to do what they can, but if you're going to, that's all on you. It's buyer beware, right? So I just wanted to mention that. And then when you talk about the equity, when we take equity or we give equity and our companies are super small, it might not sound like a lot. Oh, I'll give 5%, I'll give 7%, I'll give 10%. So 10% of nothing is nothing. 10% of a 5, 10, 15, $20 million company is a lot of money, right? And so, when we advise companies on building their advisory boards to consider giving equity, it's always 1/2, 1/4 to 90% to the advisors around the table. So I just wanted to mention.
Yeah, no, that's really good feedback. I like your comment about friends and family versa because the flip side to that is if I take money from a friend or a family member, I'm going to work extra hard.
Right.
Because it's not someone I don't know, someone that I don't have any social capital with that I'm putting at risk as well. So there's not just financial capital, there's social capital at risk. So that's something to think about. And you want to make sure that you're clear with them. Like, are you sure you can afford to lose that money?
That's
question, right? Because
still a gamble.
it's still a big risk. Yeah, I mean, early stage businesses are definitely risky. It's not no joke, right? And then your point about papering the documents. You want to make sure. I mean, we've been very lucky to work with really good attorneys, and there are many, many great attorneys that can do this for you. But make sure you get really good legal advice and also tax and accounting advice, because the way you structure a security or a loan can have sort of implications on your taxes, depending on the structure of your company. So it's really important to not do it on the back of a napkin. Do it in a proper manner. I know you want to save money because cash is king, but this is important too. Yes, Cynthia.
And on that issue, number one, even if you're working for friends and family, make sure it is legal, because when I moved here and took over my brother's company, I was not the owner, but I was representing my family, and I put my own money in it, and I had to pay gift tax on that money. They didn't have it formalized. It was an
Did your
understanding
accountant
that it was.
notify you of that?
No. Well, you're just helping the family.
You're helping someone out.
You're helping your family, and you just go in.
Unintended consequence.
Yeah, you just go in. I'll buy the equipment, no big deal. And I just deducted it as a business expense because I was CEO of a company, and IRS came and took a lot more money because it was a gift, and you pay a lot of money when you do that amount of money. So make sure no matter what, you do something with your family, which is great advice. The other thing I wanted to ask you about CONNECTpreneur, because I know it's this huge successful, and you're attracting VCs who really are interested, looking for deals,
Yes.
but that's your number 10 on your list. So, and you have a lot of people coming in and presenting
Yes.
Opportunities or seeking investors.
Yes.
How is that going? Is there a big investor interest here, or VCs in this area in DC?
Yeah, so with respect to your first part of your question about CONNECTpreneur, the companies that are presenting are almost all product companies. Actually, they are all product companies. So they would attract the angel investors and the VCs in the room. We got about 80 to 100 investors at any of our events. We have between 400 and 500 people come. Roughly 20-25% of the audience is either an accredited investor or institutional VC. And the VCs are there to network and to sort of fill their pipeline, and they're not investing currently. They're looking at downstream investments, and the angels are there looking for current investments. With respect to your other question about DC and angels and venture, I'd say that 20 years ago, there were more venture capitalists in town, and there was more capital flowing around, institutional. Today, there's fewer VCs, maybe 7, 8, 9 that are actively investing, whereas there might have been 30, 20 years ago, or 15 years ago. But the angels have sort of taken on the role, and there's angel groups like Blue Venture, Damon Angels, and New Dominion Angels, Next Gen Angels, and so on, that are sort of serving as Series A VCs were kind of taking over what Series A VCs were doing 20 years ago. So kind of an interesting dynamic. And I think that DC has no shortage of great ideas, great entrepreneurs. With the federal government here, as well as a tremendous ecosystem with universities and affluent people and educated workforce. So this is a great place to, as you guys all know, to own a business and run a business. So I think I like our long-term prospects for that.
Are people coming in from out of town to present, and are investors coming from out of town?
So we do get investors from out of town. We get investors from New York, Philly, North Carolina coming up, Florida. People that come to present at our events do come in from out of state. So we have people from Arizona, New Mexico, California, Boston, Florida. Also DC. The majority are from DC, Maryland, Virginia. But every event we do, there's 2 or 3 from out of town, right? New York,
We have one from
Boston.
Canada.
Reagan Nelson, by the way, can help if you guys have any questions or are interested in CONNECTpreneur, either coming, attending, sponsoring, whatever, presenting. So Yeah.
I just connected you with the money yesterday. Did you see?
Oh, thank you.
From
Yeah.
Atlanta.
That's right, that's right.
In November to check it out and most likely present in the next one.
Awesome, thank you for
And it
that.
is a product, I think it's a platform.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes.
I was just going to say, because I coach in a lot of businesses, that no matter what, going back to the friends and family, there's going to be an impact. What's important is to distinguish between the personal relationship and the business relationship, and it's almost impossible for people to do. So to just be aware is the relationship worth losing?
Right. So you're saying if you take money from someone, be ready to potentially have a bad breakup. Has anyone had that experience where you took money from somebody and then it didn't work out? From FF&F? Is that what's happened to you?
Oh, you know, we pay back. We pay back, yeah.
You pay back.
But I wanted to
Yes.
make the comment that it's still very hard for women-owned business to get venture capital.
Yeah, that's
Very,
true.
very difficult, very small percentage, and that Sheila Johnson and about a dozen other women in this market have put together a venture capital company to give money, to lend money to invest in women-owned businesses. So that's number one, and they're getting started. It's fairly recent. It's been less than a year that they've been in the making. And the other thing, when you were talking about your bank financing, you were referring to national banks, but your business, of course, is national in scope. But for businesses that tend to be more regional, we've got some tremendous community banks that are wonderful to work with in our market and to develop relationships with community banks.
Yeah, absolutely,
And-
you're right.
And we have, you know, with a business that I had in the past, we had found our relationship with our community bank was so far superior because we had built great relationships with individuals. And so I think people need to make sure that they look at that as an option. You know, the Bank of Americas might be everywhere, but you're dealing with a different person every day, whereas the community banks, you've got people.
You know the president.
Yeah, you know the president, exactly.
There's a lot to be said for that.
He may be your
That's
neighbor.
so important, yeah. And then to your point about, and it's true, and it's a hell of a travesty, and Steve Pace has highlighted this among others, but the percentage of VC going to women is abhorrently low, ridiculously low. It's like single digits. The percentage of VC going to people of color also horrible. But we're seeing that at least there's some awareness coming out of it, and there are groups. New York has Golden Seeds, for example. Here there's the Net Project, and Halcyon's doing some great stuff. And many people have sort of taken up the flag, and hopefully we'll see a big change there. Because I think the statistics are proving that women-led companies are outperforming male-led companies. And I don't want to misquote, of course, but I think there's a statistic that I heard from Gail Ball, who runs Chestnut Street Ventures up in Philly. She cited a study that was, I think if there's a woman on the executive team, the company outperforms companies that have no women on executive teams. I think that might be it. But it's true, and it's a shame, but hopefully the old boys club is getting, it's expanding a little bit here. Yeah. Yes?
Can you address the strategy as you're taking on financing to get your company to the level where you don't need to take on financing? Or is that typically you do that, or you always do financing?
Yeah, I was going to say, always be raising. Always be raising. That is, and I mean that literally. So not always be looking for money for yourself at any given point, but always be meeting investors. Always be meeting lenders. Don't turn down a meeting even, I don't need this person, or why does this, if they're a capital source, I take the meeting because I know I'm going to learn something new. Because they're in the market every day, I'm going to pick up something, And even if I'm not per se looking for money, I will meet with a lender or an investor because they're smart, they have they're seeing all the deals currently, and I can learn stuff that I might be able to apply my strategy. So the answer is, for me, would be absolutely always be raising, even though you don't need it. And then the other thing is, if you do need money, raise it ahead of when you need it. So it's better. They say there's a saying that says it's always easiest to raise money when you delegate. So don't think that, oh, I don't need money right now, so I'm not going to raise. It's maybe I don't need money now. Let me sort of raise now, and then maybe in a year or two I'm going to be glad I did that. Yeah.
I have something
Yes.
to your question. If we do raise the money that we don't need, what's the best way to hold on it without really paying a lot of interest and taxes?
I think that's a great question. I'll give you an example. My company, I did 3 rounds of financing. The third round we did was a year and a half or 2 years before we sold the company. And the reason I did that third round of financing was the majority of my revenue was from one customer. And I didn't want to risk going out of business. 2 of my competitors had gone out of business, big competitors, because they were 50% with, one of them was with MCI, the other one was with another company. MCI left, and the guy went under, declared bankruptcy. My other competitor in California also declared bankruptcy after they lost their biggest customer. So I'm thinking, okay, we need some cash in the bank as a cushion. If we were to lose our biggest customer, I don't want to have to fail. I want to have cash to get ready to go. So we did a raise, which wound up being extremely expensive because the valuation we got in that third round was a lot lower than we got from the first 2 rounds because the market has shifted a little bit. So I don't regret taking more money because I really did practice what I preached and raise money when we didn't need it. But we just put the money in the bank and had negative arbitrage. So we were paying more money on that money and earning very little because it was sitting in the bank somewhere, earning very little. So, I view that as the price to pay to be able to sleep at night. Knowing that if disaster struck, I've got a lot of cash sitting in the bank to protect ourselves. Hi, Marissa.
So just on that, lines of credit are not, lines of credit, you don't pay until you use, okay? And then you're on credit, right? If you build your credit, right, you don't have to use the credit cards just because you have them. And so that's also ways in which you can finance your business or access money without paying for it until you use it.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's absolutely true. You basically have the capacity to take money and not need it, and you don't pay interest on it. You might have an annual commitment fee for revolving,
sometimes, but it's so interesting. What banks will always give you an umbrella when it's sunny, right?
when it's sunny, you want to raise it, you don't need it.
I can't even tell you how many, I get daily offers of, you've been approved for a $200,000 loan.
Mm-hmm.
Really? They immediately go into the shredder. That's just dangerous. I find it to be so irresponsible, the amount of money that these, predatory lenders, because they're really loan charge, interest rates 23%, 25%. You've been pre-approved for a $100,000 loan. And companies who are desperate, they're this is great, they're not realizing you take a $100,000 loan at a 25% interest rate, 25 grand to charge that money. Credit cards that you build your credit just have to sit there. I have a stack that literally are more like that.
So credit cards, I agree, but for example, if you really could have equity on your property, but it's personal, how do you separate the personal property line of credit? If you happen to use it for the business.
Like I don't have too much credit. So we did talk to our lock with our first company, and then we were able to deduct that as a business expense. But what we did is we made payments to that HELOC and that line of credit from our business to make sure that we were paying them.
So in a way, the CPA should know how to.
You should absolutely order the CPA.
Definitely want financial advice from people that are in the market all the time. They've seen it all, So, Molly, yes.
So Tim, you've invested in lots of businesses, and some have been successful investments, and others have not been so successful. And for us in the room, we have businesses that are growing, especially when they're growing rapidly, that they need that capital looking for investors if they go that route. What are some of the things that we should be doing in advance of pitching to an investor? Are there specific attributes or characteristics of a business, things that they have to have in place before they go to someone like you to get a yes? And that's the first question. The second question is, what's the difference between an investment that was successful for you versus not so successful for you?
Right.
So can I put something on top of that? So when you're talking about the investments, the first question that Molly had, can you actually discuss how much money goes into services investing versus product investment?
Right.
Because those numbers are very different.
Right. So I'll do them all in reverse. How much money goes into services business from an equity investor, an angel investor versus product is much lower. So product, again, because angel investors and VCs want to see a big return on their investment, and they realize it's high risk. So textbook says, and I believe this is true, that product companies have high risk, high return, but the high return factor is so compelling that that's why they gravitate towards product companies rather than services companies. Lots of successful services companies have built products and become product companies. And we look over at, Sid Energy is an example, Clara Bridge, he had Clara's, he had Clara View, which was a services business, and developed a product, and then sold the services business and became
Aptus Iron Boat.
happens to a lot of different companies. So that's I wanted to address that. As far as successful angel investments that I've made versus angel investments that have failed, the main theme, I think, is the experience of the CEO. So companies that have done best are where the CEO is not a first-time entrepreneur. Okay, they've been doing it a couple times, and they were in a space that they know really, really well. So those are the two traits that I really like. Now, having America 25 or so investments, and I think we zeroed out maybe 6 of them. Now we have a few 10, 12 exits, but that's one theme I saw. And then the ones that failed, I think of the 5 or 6 that lost everything, all of them were first-time entrepreneurs. So I give the Silicon Valley VCs a lot of credit for backing college kids like Mark Zuckerberg, and taking a risk on these guys, because taking a chance on them, because first-time entrepreneurs are, it's glorified. Everyone thinks it's easy. Look at how much money they're making. They can go on a yacht. They can go play golf. They can go vacations. No way. They have no idea how hard it is. So a first-time entrepreneur, unless they grew up with it, their parents were or whatever, they have no clue about, you're going to get your teeth knocked out, you're going to get knocked down 3 times a day, and you're going to have to love getting knocked down and getting back up. And so, to your first question, for me, I look at the intestinal fortitude of the person. How tough are they? How much hell have they gone through? And have they come out okay? Have they failed a lot? I think failing a lot is a good trait, because I don't look at it as failure. This investor looks at failure as sort of like a 12-month-old baby that falls down and it's trying to walk. It falls down. I don't view that as failure. It's just trial and error. You're just iterating to find success. So, and if you've never failed, that is a real curse, because I have some friends that made a lot of money at a very young age, and then I'm talking like early 20s, multi-millions, and then never really did much afterwards, because they had that golden boy, golden girl syndrome where they thought, well, I can't make a mistake. So they achieved success through luck, but didn't realize it. They didn't have that self-awareness that it was luck. So I definitely look for someone who has intestinal fortitude and just, they love the fight. They love, getting beaten up and getting back up. They just love that, and they're so passionate about their idea that exceeds the pain of these micro failures. And then self-awareness is critical, like someone who's aware of their impact on others, and they're aware of their own limitations and strengths, and they're coachable, and they're a lifelong learner. So that's self-awareness and curiosity of being a lifelong learner are critical. So I look at the trait of the entrepreneur. I don't really look at the market as much. Other investors they want massive markets, or they want lots of patents and great IP. But for me, it's all about the founder and the team. So, yes?
To go with that, because I mean, his legacy, we had an interview, you and I, on Facebook about this, but how important is purpose and legacy now in today's business environment when it comes to what investors and venture capitalists and funders are looking for? I mean, is that something becomes a part of the priority now, or is it still in the back burner?
Yeah, I think you're seeing more of it today. Investors looking for that double bottom line win or triple bottom line win. They want the company to win, they want society to win, they want the people to win. You're seeing the millennial set, the younger generation. To them, life is more than us baby boomers. It's all about, achieving, the youngers.
Work-life balance.
Work-life balance, right? And just having a greater purpose, right? And find my why. That's really important to people like Reagan, and my kids. And it's important to us too, but I think generationally, the way our parents raised us, it's not as important. But I think that you have to migrate, you have to evolve. And I'm seeing investors are definitely looking at doing that. You're seeing incubators that are coming out that are helping. They want that double, triple bottom line type business that they're going to invest in or support. Yeah. Yes.
I have maybe a dual side question. And you mentioned it also about building up available cash, like with lines of credit and credit. So my first question is, what does that do? You have lines of credit and credit cards that you don't use.
Yeah.
How does that affect your credit?
Nothing at all. If you have open credit cards and you're not using them, they don't do anything to your credit at all.
Even if
Now, if you close them, your credit score actually goes down because then you have less available credit.
Right.
So, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Wait a minute. Thank you. The other question was, first, for a lot of entrepreneurs that are solopreneurs, you have a small team, you're growing in, and sometimes it's not big money that you need,
Right.
but maybe it's $10,000 a pop, or something. Would you suggest using your own funds or using those credit funds?
I'll let Marissa answer that. Because when we went into $50,000 in credit card debt, we had, it was three of us. So we had each of us had $50K in credit card debt. We were all in our late 20s and not married, no kids. So it was like, we felt that we had a really good idea. So we used that money for whatever we had to do. If we had to go buy.
Your own money.
This was personal credit card. Yeah, because we had incorporated, but the company was like an infant with no history or anything. But I'd love Marissa's take on this.
So, my take on that is, the first thing you do is you scrutinize every expense, okay? You go as lean as you possibly can without compromising what your goals are or what your strategy is, okay? Because you can always cut things, you can always find people to do things maybe for a little bit less, right? I mean, I have a rock star office assistant for $10 an hour.
Do you guys remember who Damon John? You guys remember who Damon John is?
Yes. So that's the first thing. The second thing is move up market. Okay, like charge more. And if your customers that you're serving now can't afford to pay more, then you move up market. I mean, that's just this is how, So once you do that, I mean, I'm a really lean operator, super lean, okay, super high profitability, super lean expenses, high value, and that's kind of like how I operate.
Yeah, lean is the operative word. So you guys know who Damon John is? Someone said yes.
Yeah.
Do you guys know Damon? He wrote a book called The Power of Broke.
Yep.
Right? Has everyone read that yet? But that's exactly what this is saying is you want to, no matter how successful you are, you want to operate lean. There's no reason to not be lean because you never know, you might lose that biggest customer. I lost my biggest customer twice, and it's not fun when that happens. And, you have to lay people off. It's an ugly situation when that happens. So if you operate with a lean mentality, that's just extra protection for your business.
Well, see, part of the question to that is, okay, there's personal credit card.
Yeah.
But when you're doing that, what's the difference, or would you suggest, or using your own funds that are here in the bank, or
So we have business
as
credit.
opposed to
We have corporate credit cards. So, and then there's lots of We use Credit Karma, which is an awesome app. Does anyone know what Credit Karma is? Okay, so it's an app on the phone, and I'm like obsessed with my credit score, right? So I'm absolutely checking my credit score. And you can simulate, like you pay this amount of debt and your credit score goes up here. And what they do is they recommend ways in which you can consolidate debt, or like, I'll give a perfect example. Like I had some debt on one of my business credit cards, and then I had another business credit card, and they were offering 18 months of 0 interest rate, right? So I transferred that whole entire balance over to that card, and then I made sure I was disciplined about paying it off. I pay very little credit card interest because there's always ways in which you can move around your money to make sure that you're not paying that interest, okay? So Credit Karma, really, really great app, and they always have these tips inside that app about how, like, based on your credit score, which credit cards will have the best interest rates for you, things like that. So just kind of just being savvy about the instruments that are out there for where you are in your business growth.
Yes, you had a question.
I did. So can you, and this is kind of just jumping back to when you were talking about the top 10, can you elaborate on what you meant by customer deposits, making 2 options and then one really cool?
Yeah, so I kind of mixed concepts there. Because when we were selling to Petco, we knew what we wanted. We needed as much cash as possible today. So we said, okay, we need 60K. So let's make that, how do we get them to pick, we give them 3 options. How do we get them to pick 60K? So we made a higher deposit number, relatively speaking. I think it might have been, give us a $20,000 deposit for net 7. So they'd have to pay us 7 days after we invoice them. Or give us $40,000 if it's net 15 days. Or give us 60 or 70,000. I can't remember if you pay us net 30. And we knew that they're net 30 payer because that's what all big companies are. So we said, okay, they're going to go for this option. So what we did was we kind of knew which option they would want, and we made that the one where we need to put the amount of money that we really needed to fund our business. And that's what they chose. But I was also mixing up the pricing. So when you're offering a price, let's say you have 3 packages to offer. You see this online, with gold, silver, bronze. Right. Gold, silver, bronze, call me, you know. But you know, the companies, generally these SaaS companies, software as a service companies, they want you to buy a certain one of those 3. And you can kind of figure it out because it's the one that's, oh, that looks like the best deal. So that's what I was saying, is we were trying to use that concept to make it seem that when they looked at the 3 options, that option jumped out, oh, we can do that. And that's the one that we needed. So that's what I meant. Yeah, didn't mean to confuse you. I don't know if we have time. Cynthia, are we on schedule or do we have time?
I have no idea. I'm just so engrossed. I've been tweeting everything you've been saying.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You're a social media guru.
Really?
You are.
No. Anybody else have anything? What did you think of this? Was this amazing?
Thank you so much.
So next CONNECTpreneur is?
November 16th, Baltimore, December 13th, Falls Church, CONNECTpreneur.org.
And I've been tweeting,
R. Nelson at opus8.com, I have T1, opus8.com. Feel free. If you have any questions, you want to talk more about some of these financing options, just give us a call.
Last bit of advice.
Yes,
What's the
ma'am.
last thing, the most important thing everybody in the audience should remember? What do you think is the number one thing, the takeaway for today?
As far as?
What you spoke on in investing today in companies and growth.
Well, the number one thing I said, never ever give up. Never give up. Because you're going to look like your dark days, no light at the end of the tunnel. But if you just keep getting up, and you guys are all entrepreneurs, you know that, then eventually something great's going to happen. And that would be it. As far as financing your business, I would say lean, act like you're broke. You know, I mean, really, because we're all in small businesses. We're not IBM. We don't have unlimited cash in the bank. I mean, we have to operate that way. And, you know, the economy could change, the government could change, the recession could come, we could lose your biggest customer. So many nasty things that can happen to us. So I think it's very, very important to be fiscally responsible. Yeah, that's it. I appreciate your having me.